What's on Tap podcast was started about a year ago in response to how the restaurant industry was hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. We have 4 pillars to the podcast. One of them is to share information about the resources available to our industry family. And another is to shine a light on all the good things that the industry is doing to help one another. Early on in the pandemic, there were a lot of grants, free meals, and other opportunities available. It was inspiring to see how we all came together. Many of those programs eventually dried up, but the need didn't for a lot of people, especially those outside of the social safety nets. When we learned about what acclaimed chef Diana Dávila and her crew at Mi Tocaya had started, we reached out to find out more. Diana, thanks for having us, and welcome to What's on Tap.
Bienvenidos. I'm glad you're here.
We're thrilled. It's very exciting to meet you for the first time. Obviously, you've got quite a reputation, and so it's an honor to be here. What's on Tap was actually started in response to what happened with COVID and trying to do whatever we could to give back to the hospitality industry. And early on, there was a lot of episodes about how people are helping each other. And, you know, this restaurant's doing these free food drops and these places are doing other things. And we noticed that once things opened back up in the summer, or partially opened back up, and they had the patio, so it kind of felt like we were opening back up for a while, a lot of those things dried up because obviously the restaurants had like work to do, you know, business. But the need didn't go away for a lot of people. And so we've been paying attention to what you've been doing here, and we were very impressed, and we wanted to get the scoop and find out a little bit more about it.
Thank you. So the program that we're doing, that we're putting together, that we put together, this is our 3rd week right now that we're full in motion, is the Todas Ponen project. And Todas Ponen project was like a little sort of Athena in my head maybe I want to say that it was probably about November, end of November, when we were thinking about, well, you know, the restaurant industry is really tough right now. January, February begin to be really, we just didn't know what to expect, you know, especially since we didn't know what's going to happen with PPP money. Business just fluctuates too much. You're really busy, and then you're not. And then with the weather, so many components. And we noticed that a lot of people were closing, and we imagine that it's probably because sort of bracing themselves and wanting to reopen back up probably in whether it's March, April, once it's nicer and hopefully we get more information on
going to hibernation.
Second round of, right.
Yeah.
That's not something that we wanted to do. We definitely did not want to close, but we knew that we had to come up with something. I mean, when you see sort of your bank account start going down and, you know, there's just certain, you need to meet some sort of threshold, and before you do that, you should plan. So it was idea that we had, instead of not closing, what is it that we want to do? One of the main reasons why we didn't want to close was because we were already at a minimum staff. And if we started cutting hours, this is the livelihoods of our most loyal employees at this point, especially. I mean, they just spent a whole year in change after change after change that we've been trying to implement. Let's try this out. Let's try this. Different hours, different days. And they've been here for years. So, and not, you know, it's their livelihoods. And if they don't have access to unemployment, well, 100% they're going to need to find a different job. And right now the job market in restaurants is really difficult. And I mean, let alone the stress of, you know, the financial stress, but then also trying to find a place where you feel comfortable, where you're going to get paid right. I mean, there's so many things. And so, and you can't expect to oh, okay, we're open back up now in 3 months. Who knows?
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, there's a certain obligation, just I imagine, as any, any sort of team or family. There's a certain obligation that I feel that we all have to each other. So that was a principal reason. And we're like, well, what could we do to keep them full on? I mean, at that point, also, we had already started cutting hours to people who were already working part-time and who were also undocumented, because good thing that they had 2 jobs. But I mean, going from 40 to 30 to 25 hours, I mean, right. It's a big deal. And so how can we keep people employed, give them full time? How can we keep our doors open without just completely depleting our bank account, so we could ensure that when the time does come around where we're able to open back up inside, indoors, or do patio, we still have the ability to financially.
Yeah. I mean, you can't be all heart and no head, because then you run out of money, and then you can't do anything. So
exactly. And so we just kept on asking ourselves those questions. And then also along with that, we had already done a free meal program that was part of the Power of 10 initiative that was started by a friend of mine, Chef Eric Bruner in DC. And we loved it. I mean, our team loved it. We loved everything about it. We made friends with the non-for-profit organization that we paired up with. We really, I mean, everybody who had worked here that was on our team connected tremendously with the sort of food drops that we were doing, the meals that we were doing, mostly with the people, the connection with people. And there's nothing like actually giving something without wanting anything in return. And it really is a true rarity, you know.
Like, you serve food all the time, but people are paying for it, and it's a transaction. It's transactional.
Exactly.
Hopefully they had a great time and enjoyed the meal, and you hope you enjoyed working for it, but it's a different feeling.
Yeah, it is. And so it felt great, and we loved for sort of the other great part about that too was, we had been here in this neighborhood for the restaurant for 3 years. At that point, almost 4 years. And, it really even made us even more grounded in the neighborhood, because this association they're led by this group of spectacular women who really understand what the fundamentals of what community means, and really work and balance that and provide so many different resources for people who are in need, and where we need, where there is a faltedad, how do you say faltedad, like something that is lacking, and which happens all the time in many neighborhoods, and Logan Square is no different. And they do a really, really great job of giving people the voice, giving them the access to help, and doing this all with heart and like a soul of motherhood, I feel like, which is spectacular. So,
and that's the Logan
we hit
Square
it off.
Association?
Logan Square Neighborhood Association. And so, like, we just kept on going further and further and further into like, oh, well, we really like that. That was great. Well, how do we do this free meal program? Because we don't have any money, which is great. Right. But it's funny because I think that people always think that you need money to do things, and in reality, you just have to build your own opportunities and around that. And I feel like the money is nowhere near the first or the second or the third thing that you actually have to think about.
Right.
And so that's how it all came about. I'm like, well, let's do a free meal program for targeting undocumented restaurant workers, as well as families that are in need. In our neighborhood, there's a very large working Latino family population. that rapidly, I don't know how rapidly at this point, well, probably even more so now, facing gentrification, facing getting kicked out, losing their jobs, being forced to move. And so it all just sort of started falling naturally into place. And then the last thing was the money. So
and that's
we're
a great lesson.
Just raise it. Yeah.
I mean, that's a great lesson. Like, you got to have that, vision that people can buy into, and then you get movement. And then the movement, people will come along and support that. But if you're sitting on the sideline waiting for it to happen, someone's got to take that initiative. So.
Yes.
And so you're doing the food drops, and if people are hungry.
So they're coming here. So what we did was we figured out a schedule where it would be Tuesday through Friday, 11 to 3. People will be able to come in here anytime and pick up as many meals as they would like, and as well as coffee from our friends. You gotta love, again, that sense of community. I hate using the same words over and over again, but it's one of those words. Yeah. Dark Matter gave us lots of beautiful coffee, and people could come in and fill up their own. Or we also have, donated to-go cups for coffee as well, which I think everybody spends a lot of money on coffee or especially is missing. Matter. Yes. Yeah. So big ups to them for helping us, for contributing, and then Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we open with a smaller menu. And that's those days we focus on paying our bills.
Right. So
paying our bills and doing service for 3 days is significantly different than, we wouldn't be able to just survive on 3 days, but we also wouldn't be able to do the spread of, okay, well, let's do 5 days. Not knowing what to expect. And so this way, I thought that it was a really good balance of being able to keep our doors open, for us to break evens, to stop that sort of that dive in the bank account, and to keep everybody employed, to have everybody again, like it's super fulfilling. It really is. We're also doing drops at Love Fridge. We're doing drops. The Logan Square neighborhood ladies are also coming in and picking up large amounts of meals and dropping them off to these families who are in need. They're so in touch. Yeah, they're so in touch with the families that are in this neighborhood. And so that's how it started. The last piece was really after rekindling sort of our relationship with LSNA, was they set up, they're a non-for-profit, so they set up a link for our program. And then next thing I knew, was talking to the small, also non-for-profit group, Dish Roulette, who have also been huge helps and champions in sort of helping small businesses with, but really by any means. And they sort of helped me clean up my social media act, like make things look a lot more digitally nicer. Things that, it's not my skill set.
So you're doing
and putting the word out there. So, yeah. And just through all of that, that's how we've been getting the donations go towards keeping people employed and creating these meals to serve people, to get them. There's nothing like a full meal. And it's one of those things that I see all the time with working families, that sometimes the meals end up suffering. Your nutrition suffers because
eating just rice.
It could be, maybe it's 5 days a week, or maybe it's only 3, or maybe, but those changes in your sort of nutrition are huge, especially for children who are, developing, and
for extended periods of time, because this is a long pandemic.
Right, like getting fast food that has no nutritional value and quite the opposite. We'll give you, you know, we'll stay with you in a negative way for years to come. And then next thing you know, I mean, all those are stimulants as well, like sugar, salt. And, you know, and then you're into bad habits,
Right.
you know? And so, I mean, I've talked to so many people, including, you know, our employees, past and present, about what was it like. We always talk about, like, what was it like growing up, where, you know, what did your mom do? What did your dad do? Or where did you grow up? I think it's always important. I mean, we do it with our food, right? We do it with our food. Like, where do these tomatoes come from? Where does this get made? All of that. Like, why not do that with your team as well? Like, getting to know people is important.
Yeah, and you felt that, like, as we were setting up, just watching you interact with your staff. I think I mentioned to you, like, they just seemed so committed and engaged, and like they were just enjoying being here. You know, it's the end of the day, and you could just sense that.
That's why we call ourselves a gang.
It's a good gang.
Trying to put like a positive spin, I think, in, you know, a lot of times, especially in communities of color, it is difficult for people sometimes to want to be able to step away from the negative connotations that people may have of, you know, of the way you talk or the way you dress or the way you, there's certain little cultural things that you pick up, you know. Sure. And I think that we didn't do it intentionally at first. I think we're, like you said, I think that we're just like proud of each other, and then it turned into wanting to put a positive spin into a word like gang. Sure.
And so one of the initiatives that you have to kind of draw attention and awareness to this is your interviews with a series of chefs.
Yes.
So you're actually a host too. So how am I doing?
You're doing great. I have to take notes because I feel that I'm terrible. I think I'm like a terrible interviewer, and I'm like trying to get better. Hopefully people have noticed.
I mean,
I doubt it because I don't know. Like, I want to be better, and I just feel like, I don't know, it's hard. It's hard.
It's a lot harder than people think. You know,
you have to do a lot of work, I think, ahead of time to like really know. I mean, you have to invest in the person that you're interviewing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some research.
It could be hard. Yeah.
And fortunately
for me to do that much.
Well, right. It takes a lot of time, but at least for me in this interview, you know, there's a ton of information about you out there. Like I couldn't read all of it. So it made it really easy. And I think what we try to do on each of the shows too is not just talk about a very specific thing, but get to know the chef or the restaurateur. So could you tell us a little bit about your history and how you got into the industry and how you got to Mi Tocaya today?
Yes. So the industry was really getting into restaurants was, I think, I know that I was into at a very, very young age. I am lucky to have parents who have always been very eccentric. They always love. I mean, my mother would love to host, and really a lot of the women in my family in Mexico. We don't have that much family here in the States, and let alone in Chicago. And so it was whenever we would go to Mexico in the summers, like, and there would be a lot of cooking because it's almost like, even though we would stay for 2 months, you know that you only see each other for that amount of time, and then after that, you know, and then a lot of times you never know, you know. Something I understand now, I mean, people's jobs change, or sometimes you're not going to be able to do that. So you always I feel that we always did a really good job of appreciating that. And so cooking was at the center of that. My aunt loved to cook in Mexico, so I would always want to be in the kitchen with her cooking. And she was the kind of cook that would, she ran the household. She was a stay-home mom, and she almost like makes me feel like one of those 50s get-ups, right? Where like she has she's in charge of the household. She did have help, but she didn't have to cook. I mean, but she did it because she wanted to, and because she loved it. And going to the markets, listening to her choose things, ask questions to the people who are there, who are really the experts, right?
Sure, they grew it.
And was always really inspiring. And then same thing with here with my parents. I mean, they were always they were working parents. However, I think I don't know if it was because they felt bad. I never really asked them. I think it's just because they love to do all sorts of things, So we would have days where even if we didn't have a lot of money, we would still go out to eat at, Chicago's trendiest restaurants. And my mom always had cooking magazines. And so whenever she would have a party, it was at the forefront of how, there's nothing like a cooking magazine when you have everything presented with that high definition and that gloss and the way it looks and, the whole look, right? And the same thing with restaurants. I mean, we always very much enjoyed restaurants. I think to me, it was like always going to a show. And we appreciated food so much. So I feel that that was instilled in me at a very young age. And it didn't matter whether it was trendiest. I mean, we would have days where it'd be like a extravaganza of going downtown and having fancy brunch at the Drake, and then walking around and seeing where it would take us, going to like 5 restaurants in one day, and we appreciated it. I know it sounds really sort of snobby, but it was kind of like our thing, it was like our thing, and it was really special to us. Yeah. And so to me, restaurants, I think that's where I really started appreciating and loving the sort of theatrics and the feeling, the sounds, appreciating that there is people who are cooking this, whether it is a chef or people who have been cooking breakfast food for 30 years, or un taquero who's been doing this for 40 years. Yeah. So appreciation of craft. My mom's also an artist, so I feel like she would always be, she'd always be critiquing. I'd be more experienced. Yeah. She'd be like, oh, I don't like that color scheme. Look at that. So I think at that young age, I had that growing up, and to put on top of that, my parents, when we were probably about 4th or 5th grade, they opened up their first taqueria named Jalapenos. And my dad was a mechanic, my mom was a nurse, and they really wanted to have something of their own. And where it's not like if they wanted to be, oh yeah, I love cooking, I want to, showcase my, it was a sense of entrepreneurship and having something of their own and something to pass down, or you didn't have to sort of rely on always everybody else. So.
But not a mechanic shop.
Right.
It's like, let's do a restaurant.
Right. Uh-huh. And, it was fast food with some dine-in, and, my mom had a natural hospitality about her, and my dad was, knew how to, he was a Mr. Fix-It and knew how to, like, any sort of thing that my mom wanted to build out or color or plumb or change out, like he would crack open a book and do it. So it worked out, and they loved food, so it worked out really well. So I grew up in that sort of environment in kitchens.
And I think it's a little different though, because a lot of people want to create restaurants that have never been in it because, again, they love the whole experience of it. And usually what I find, someone told me this once, and I really reiterate it as much as I can, if you love going out, dining out, it's probably best just to, instead of buying a restaurant, opening a restaurant, just find your favorite restaurant and go there. You can be the star. You can know everybody, and you can go home at the end of the night. And a lot of people who don't know how to run a restaurant fail quickly. But your parents obviously did something very well.
They had it for a long time, and there was lots of ups and downs. I mean, throughout the years, I want to say that they probably had like maybe 7 total, but not all at the same time. Just because, like this location did well, this one didn't. Like trying out, it was a lot of trial and error, and some places worked out great, and some places didn't, and some required more work. There were also like, well, this one's much more fast food, like. This one's sit down, this one's, so while they both, worked full time. And so, I mean, even the people that we ended up having two gentlemen that worked with us since day one. And we still, even though that they closed their last restaurant the year that I opened this place. So it was actually kind of a nice transition, I think, for them as well. Like it's like almost like if there's something lives on, because we used some of the artwork that my mom would make, and so awesome. Like it feels like it lives on. It lives on. Do
they help you out here then?
No. I mean, yes, because it's just it's how should I say it? It's hard when I very much had my own vision for what I wanted to do, and sometimes asking help. Being in business with family, sometimes it has its ups and downs. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to have those downs. I wanted to keep it separate, and that they help with like things like, oh, can you help me install this or that, which is huge help, because I mean money adds up really, really quick. So with those things, yes, but then everybody starts having their own opinion. They start telling you, and I wasn't trying to hear all that.
Yeah,
wanted to do what I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's hard when you all of a sudden become the boss, and that's.
Well, I mean, especially because I have a relationship with my parents being. There's a level of obedience and respect that you should have to your parents. And so I just didn't think that it would be good, especially because we have 2 different styles, complete different, many different styles. There's some things that it's just different. So I just didn't want to mix that. And luckily I didn't have to. I mean, I had a small business loan and an amazing solo investor that also felt very, because they were so well seasoned, they spent their whole lives in restaurants and also in owning. And so Parento, that also was great, because I could just call them and ask them for advice, or call my parents and ask them for advice, and didn't have to answer to anybody about whose money goes where. We got to call the shots.
Enjoying this episode? Don't forget to subscribe to be alerted to future episodes. What's on Tap is brought to you by TappedIn, a restaurant solutions company dedicated to making restaurateurs' lives easier and their businesses more successful. If your bar or restaurant could use help with anything from social media to Wi-Fi marketing to digital signage or anything else, head over to gettappedin.io to find out more.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, so were you working at your parents' restaurant from day one, or?
Yeah. I mean, when I was younger, at first they didn't want to. I mean, I was a kid, I would help in the back scene, helping washing dishes and, filling up those little souffle cups of salsa and sour cream and baggies of chiles and vinagre. And so, I mean, I would help with that stuff. But, I mean, it also, I think my parents also didn't think that it would look good having a small child over there doing. And I was the one out of my siblings, I was the only one that really wanted to. I mean, I would bother the cooks. I wanted to help. I wanted to do this. I wanted to take orders. I wanted to do it all.
And so, but at some point though, you take over as the chef of your parents' restaurant?
And I didn't, well, they bought one place. This is what I mean. My parents are crazy. They bought one huge place, very beautiful, but I mean, huge. I mean, when I see it, I'm just like, so much work. But they don't see that. That's just crazy. Even I, at a young age, was like, this is way too much work.
Yeah.
So they wanted to have a concept of, which doesn't surprise me, I guess, of sort of an upscale Mexican restaurant. And really, I mean, it's ahead of, I don't want to say ahead of its time, but I mean, the fact that they think that their like 20-year-old daughter could do it, I think that's pretty insane. And originally I didn't want to, I'm like, I'll work there, but like, since I'm super humble, I was like, I'll be the sous chef. I can't take the main job.
But your experience up to them was just working in their restaurants?
No, I had already worked at, so I started working at, in kitchens, I want to say when I was like 17 or 18 years old. I sort of had a chef moment, a moment of like, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Kind of a moment.
Usually doesn't happen when people have that.
No, and so like I want to say that's probably, I hate using words like blessed or lucky, but that's definitely something that I'm super grateful for, because people could spend such large portions of their lives trying to find that and
doing things they hate every day.
Yeah. And so I found that super early when I was about 17, and it just kind of happened. Everything sort of just made sense to what I wanted to do.
And so you take over your parents' restaurant at the ripe age of 20.
Yeah, I want to say I was 20 or 21, something like that.
Yeah. And how'd that go? I mean, a lot of people are not ready for it, just mature-wise. Like, they'd rather be hanging out with their friends and partying at 21.
That's because they don't know what they want to do.
Yeah. I'm sure that has a lot to do with it.
You see what I mean? And I feel like, it's important to explore that, But, yeah. I mean, I was obsessed, I'm still obsessed, it's an obsession, I think, that you have, like, when you just want to learn more and more and more and more, and you like love there's I feel like being a cook, there's so many things that fill up. The day goes by like the day always went by like this to me, because it's like, okay, like getting ready, you're constantly thinking about what you have to do, your moves, your setup, your prep, like the things you need to grab, the equipment you need to grab, getting changed, like, being put together. And then you start. It's like, all right, game time. It's like ready to go, and then after that, there's like, okay, like whether you're doing family meal or you're not, or, having sort of that sort of meeting of like, this is what's happening tonight. This is how many people we have, like, and then having the last hour, and then, all right, it's game time. Like, doing your last little garnishes, making sure all your things look super tight and clean and ready to grab, and it's all, I don't know, it was always very intriguing and beautiful to me. Like I love it,
it's a crazy dance.
Yeah, and then once service starts, it's super, super fun. Like you really get to sort of, that's actually the moment where all of that work of the prep, the sauces, the bones, the butchering, the putting produce away, the everything, that comes together, for like, I even have the song in my head, like this magic moment, like where like it all comes together right there.
Yeah.
And then you're gonna do that plate like 50 times, but it doesn't matter, because it's you just keep on. It's a beautiful thing. It's like a symphony, and I've always very much enjoyed being a line cook, and I'm a really good one.
I wish they had more reality shows about culinary and kitchens and whatnot, because all the ones that are on, it's all about, it's fake. But I think the real life, like of a chef is extremely interesting in the chaos that happens back there versus the calm that they're trying to project in the dining room and stuff is just really interesting. They don't need to doctor that up. They just need to show it.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's just cameras just need to be there, right? Yeah. So, yeah. I mean, I had already had some jobs in. I was going to say professional kitchens, but that makes it seem like if this wasn't, I don't know, in like the fancy schmancy, places with known chefs and stuff, and so I was excited, to sort of bring what I had learned to the table. And lo and behold, like I just didn't, the person that they had hired just didn't seem to be up to par with, I think, with what my parents wanted. And I mean, they would ask me, and I was honest as well. And so I ended up taking over. So like something that I originally didn't want to do, and I'm so happy that I did do so, because if I didn't have that experience, I feel like I had like my first shot. I would have been scared I would have said no.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like I said no to them, and so I'm happy that kind of worked out for me. And
then eventually you found your way to DC.
Yeah, so I worked at my parents' place. It was great. But I mean, it was tough market, especially when you're like in the south side of Chicago. And, it's just hard, especially when you're doing Mexican food that, is an upscale concept. Takes, people, especially at that time, I think it was very difficult to have the mindset that Mexican food could be in that medium. Of course, like Rick Bayless was doing it, but, it's hard to get there, and so, so after that, more cooking jobs, and I ended up working, so I got married and we ended up moving to DC. I knew that my husband always was like, he worked at Nordstrom, and I knew he always told me that like, hey, in order for me to like sort of move up and this, like you gotta move around to get those big positions, and that, that's, you gotta do that to get that money. Sure. And so, so I was always like, all right, what places, like, what are we talking? LA, New York, like, yes. And he's just like, yeah, I think he just told me like, yeah, just to, whatever.
Just keep the dream alive in your mind.
Liar.
Yeah.
And then, so I was like, yeah, cool. But he said DC, and at the time I really didn't know too much about DC other than like, I don't know, Lisa going to DC and The Simpsons and, that sort of ordeal. And
the cartoon, how a bill becomes a law.
Yeah, exactly. Right, exactly. So at first I was a little sad, because I'm like, I don't really know anything about over there. But then I'm like, oh, I think, Jose Andres is over there, and like I'm sure that has a scene. And so I'm like, yeah, and at the end of the day, it's kind of nice because being a cook, you could get a job anywhere.
Right.
You just have to, in any place, there's a sort of there's food culture everywhere. So you still get to decide where you want to work,
Yeah.
You just have to, the places that I would work at, I didn't submit my resume. I would like walk in, like not walk in, like, can you let me in? Knock and ask for a job, and have my resume and be ready if needed to work, And so, moved out there for 5 years.
And how is the restaurant scene different, DC versus Chicago?
When we first moved there, hated it.
Really?
Yeah, I hated it. Like we would go out to eat, like really sort of, I just felt like all the restaurants that they said that were the good restaurants, and like by who, I mean like the food critics, like I would see who, and we didn't have any friends or anything out there, so it's not like if we're like, what are the places? So we were just going by like what the food critics were saying, and I found it to be boring and like very 10 years ago, and totally catering to pretty much just almost like an aristocratic class of like, this is just give them what they want, sort of a thing. And let's put some big name chef name on it, and woohoo. And there you have it, the best restaurant in the city, And so, I mean, of course we found some that we liked. Of course, that goes without saying. But in general, I feel like it was kind of a boring scene, to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
I'm just going to add to, I don't know why, but it was also very hard out there. I feel like it was really different. I didn't know until moving out of Chicago just how supportive and full of camaraderie the restaurant industry here in our city is, and going there really made me find out real quick.
And sometimes that's the reason why, right? Just to be able to better appreciate what you have.
I mean, I don't think I ever really, I knew I was accustomed to being sort of the only woman in a lot of, almost everywhere that I worked. But I think it was the first time I full blown out in your face, no mames, sexism, like in your face like that.
In DC.
And I felt like at that point I felt ready to take on, again, me being, I thought I was like, okay, cool. This means that I could start applying for sous chef positions. Like, I think that's my next step, looking for sous chef positions. And it was really difficult. You could see it in people's faces. You could see it in people's, like they wouldn't even look at my resume. And I'm just like, look again, it's a good one,
Yeah.
And, or like, let me do the tasting, or like, it was like one look at you and it's like, who is this little girl who thinks that she's going to be able to do anything in this kitchen, sort of a thing. So it was really hard. And I finally did find a sous chef position, and with a really well-known restaurant group there. And funny enough, this owner, he had like 7 restaurants at that time when I was there, and he would go to every single one of them multiple times a day.
Jeez.
And was just always just so on top of everything. And I feel like he really took a liking to me, and because I did a tasting there, and he really liked the tasting, and he, so I feel like he also sort of started putting you in my head, sort of asking me things like, how much money did you spend today? Those kinds of questions that like, I wanted to be prepared. I wanted to be prepared and to know to show him that, I was on top of my game, and even told him, I'm like, open up a restaurant, a Mexican restaurant on here. There's not any Mexican food, and, I'll do it.
Well, a lot of times,
not that he was going to give it to me.
Well, right, but the fact that he,
because I was a woman at the end. At the end of the day, I was a woman, and too risky.
Really?
Oh yeah.
But at least he trained you to think like a business person too, because a lot of chefs and restaurateurs.
And he did want the best for me. And it's just sometimes it's hard. I get it. Like it's hard breaking those sort of molds, but
it's the
and that sucks.
barriers.
Yeah, that sucks. It really does. It really does.
Well, we'll have to show him this, and we'll see where he's at right now.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I got hired by another woman, a restaurant, a woman who couldn't have been a better match. I feel like, because she's like this. She'll probably hate me for saying this too, like just sort of like Jewish princessy, goth punk. Like she like led a punk scene there in DC, like, and is opening up. It had this restaurant that was just like. It was such a wild, beautiful place. and I couldn't have asked for a better place to, or for a better person to, people, her and Patrick, Jackie and Patrick, to give me that opportunity and to lead, give them, I don't know, giving me creative reign for their restaurant.
Yeah. And so you're there for what, 5 years, you said?
Yes.
And then what brought you back? Was it you or the husband that said, let's
both.
get back?
Kind of both. As much as, I've made some incredible relationships in DC, it just never felt like home. And also, it was, I especially never felt welcomed in the restaurant community. And that's that, like I got reviewed well and did some amazing things, and like went to events and would introduce myself, and it was just like, no, thank you. It was pretty ugly. Yeah. It was really actually pretty ugly. And that's why, like, sometimes my husband's like, why do you talk about that? And it's just like, if I don't, then, people should know, because maybe sometimes people don't know that they're doing it. And then sometimes they do know. And, there's a time to call out motherfuckers, and you should.
Well, think about it. Like, you didn't know what you had until you went there. They might be in that same bubble of like, this is just the way it is. And they've never really thought like what it should be or could be by working in another city like Chicago.
Yeah. So, what brought us back was that, yes, there's a combination of not feeling like home. Also, at that point, I already had my first daughter, and she was about to almost be 2. We were we just turned 30, and we're just like, you know what? He also he hit like a sort of creative mode in his job where, I think he met like the threshold as high as he was going to get to go without, whatever. And wanting to try sort of, you got to take chances, right? And so it's like when you're 30, you're so young and you still have a chance. I'm like, well, we did well for ourselves. Let's do it again. Let's blow some shit up and try to see if we could do, but make our lives at home, where we want it to be. We didn't want to spend our vacation time coming home to visit friends and family. We wanted to spend our vacation time traveling and seeing the world. And we didn't have, it's just nice I want my daughter to grow up knowing who her grandparents and are, that for them to be closer, Sure. And so for my husband, it was sort of a creative thing. For me, it was a little homesick, and we both just thought that it was, that we were young enough and ambitious enough and had enough that even if we were to fail a couple times, we could be financially secure.
You had enough runway, both in time and finances to weather that storm. And so did you have a job lined up when you came back? Did you come here and start looking?
We said that we would move back as long as one of us had a job. But it was kind of hard for me because, I really enjoyed working for Jackie and Patrick. And at that time, I had already done, they had Jackie's, and then right next door, we had opened up a new concept, Sidebar, which was like at the time when like the cocktail movement was like on fire. They had, so opened up that concept, and then helping out with a concept that they had already had, just checking in, like basement burgers. Like, it was the epitome of a perfect dive bar, and then some, and then a Mexican concept as well, in like a really sort of awesome neighborhood. And it got so I got to have a lot, and then they were going to open up another place, and so we just always had such a great rapport. And so I don't know if I told him, but yeah, I never was looking for jobs. I guess I was just waiting for him to get a job because, it was going to be hard for me. I really enjoyed working with the people, the team over there.
Yeah. And so you come back to Chicago, you've got a 2-year-old, you get your first big job here. Mm-hmm. And you were the exec?
when I came back, what did I do? I found out real quick that being away for 5 years is crazy long time in restaurant years.
Wow, a lot of things changed.
I should have probably got people's numbers before I had left.
But their MySpace accounts weren't still alive?
Yeah, well, I was never that kind of person. Like, I was always like every now and again I would, get a drink with some people from the crew, but not really, no. Like I don't know, I was just always really motivated to keep sort of that part of my life separate. Plus, it can get really sloppy when you do that, as many people know in this industry. So
most do.
Yes. And so I really didn't have people's numbers, and like at the time I didn't even, before I left, I barely used a cell phone because I was at work the whole time. And, and if somebody wanted, like my husband and I are like high school sweethearts. So everybody already knew to like, talk to him if there was going to be a get together,
right.
Like
you probably had more normal hours, and
right?
so easier
Exactly.
to get a hold of.
Yeah, and so I was like, wow, I feel like I don't know anybody, and I don't know how to get a hold of anybody, and restaurants close. I mean, restaurants that you used to work at aren't there anymore, which is just the reality of the situation. I mean, it's the way this industry could be, and so I reached out to, and I also did it, like I wanted an executive position. I wanted to run my own show, and I wanted to have sort of the same thing that I had helped build with my previous owners in DC. That to me was a dream scenario.
Sure.
I didn't want to own my own place. And funny enough, this place, Mi Tocaya, was had a fire. And one time I was just like, I don't know, we were on the boulevard because we, live here, and we saw that there was a fire and that this place was for rent. And I'm just like, man, if it wasn't having to do a build out, that would be such a perfect place.
Yeah.
The first summer when we moved back, like daydreaming about this place, and be like, can't do it, like total build out, and like can't do it, can't afford it. And so I was just looking and looking and looking and looking and looking and looking, and again, it's I feel like it's hard when. I feel that I have always worked for, I've always sort of chosen whom I want to work for and where I want to work, and I think that's important. But I didn't work for like one of the big, names where like, Charlie Trotter or, I don't know, places like that where they are like, okay, if you worked here, then you could, and I did work for, a fantastic chef that like has throughout the years, actually during this whole thing, helped me. So I was working part-time with him as a line cook while I was looking for an executive chef position. And it's hard. People really didn't want to. And if they did want to give you the position, it would be 100% under sort of their terms and not give you creative control. And at that point, I knew I wanted to do Mexican food, too. So, like, I think it was also one of those things where, like, well, only, how are you going to compete against this person? Like, you didn't work for Rick Bayless, so how are we going to market you? I'm like,
my food.
Bitch, I'm a woman, and I'm Mexican, and I have a lot of experience, and I, like, could do
all the other boxes are
tasting,
checked.
and you love the tasting, like, why not?
Yeah.
And so it was just hard. Like, I feel like I kept on getting sort of taken advantage of almost, and there's a couple times where I like backed out of things because I'm like, no. People would think that my menu would be too ambitious, or people don't know what this is, or like, why isn't this in English? And, it's like, so you have no problem with people using French terms and Italian terms, and but if you use Spanish and it's not from Spain, And if somebody doesn't know it, like, half the time I don't know. Like, I mean, there's so many times, like, you live and you learn, like, you know what I mean? Like, I still remember the first time I read, I'm like, what's Persolo when I was young? And like, you ask, and then they'll let you know.
And it's exciting.
Like, what's the problem?
Yeah.
But no, I mean, people don't want to eat this, sort of a thing. And so I got a lot of that, but I finally did get a chef position. And that later blew up in my face. Yeah.
And looking back, is that because you just found somebody who is...
No, I wouldn't change anything at all, because it was an incredible, I can't stress how much of an incredible experience. Ultimately, it was a project that started as a kind of relatively small project, but I still felt comfortable with the size of it. I was always sort of kind of a classic sort of 60 to 80 seat dining room. But I really liked the owners. Getting to know the whole process of how big and how unique this project was, like cooking Mexican food with local ingredients, but not just local ingredients, actually trying to do that 70% of like doing that year round, like trying to hit a mark of 60-70% local. And and that whole build out took a long time. So they really invested in my education. I got to travel throughout the Midwest, got to do lots of sort of little farm dinners, got to meet a ton of farmers. So there's no way I could ever regret that, because I mean, at that point I didn't have sort of farm experience, like in DC I had farm, like I would work with farmers, but I never actually went on site and harvested or did dinners there, or like, so it was different. And so I spent a long time doing that, and that was incredible, and tons of research, and even schooling, in Madison. So it was a great time, and I got to meet a lot of incredible people, and I was also allowed to be the head bitch in charge, which was great, but it's good when it's good, and then when it's bad, it got bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I parted from the project like 2.5 months after opening, and it was really hard because, the stuff that we were doing was really, really incredible, and we're so proud of the team and really everything. Yeah. I mean, it was incredible. Yeah. It was incredible. Yeah. So yeah, that was the last position I had before owning my own place.
Yeah. And so you're looking for something new, but at that point you didn't know whether you wanted to own or work for somebody else. Were you burned out from working for somebody else? Did you know at that point?
It was kind of a combination of both, like I went through like, a sort of breakup, like a really angry breakup mode, like crazy Latina breakup mode, where first I'm angry and pissed and, talking to myself, and then depressed.
All the cycles.
And like, and then depressed, and I just felt somewhere during the anger and the depression, there was definitely a moment where like, I'm done. Like I'm done working for other people. I want to have my own place. I mean, it took so much out of me. That place took so much out of me. I mean, I was working 22-hour days, like, and I had a young daughter, and there's times where like sometimes I would, when I would hold her, I would just start crying because I then felt guilty, but I'm just like, just a little bit longer. Yeah. It's tough. It's really tough. And so I'm like, I want to be able to have a space where I could, bring my child to work and like create my own space where I could do that, and where I don't have to sort of choose that, where I could manage it and it could be more manageable for me, and they could grow up in that. So like I did have that moment, but I'm like, I think that at the time I was still like money, we don't have. How can I ask, especially because my husband always took care of sort of he's the finances in sense of like our retirement money, like stock options, and like he's always been the sort of what are we going to do when we could no longer, like we want to build something, right? So he would always handle sort of that, and I'm just like, how could I ask him to put in our place that we just got and risk your whole, especially when he's probably looking at me like, this woman's a hot mess, So, I felt a lot of that. So that happened. And I was also looking, I did get a lot of people who wanted to come and, that wanted to meet. They have a location, but it was the same thing of, like I'm not interested in profit sharing. There's no fucking profits in restaurants. And if there are, I'm sure as hell not going to be the one that you guys are going to let me see the books and let me see how all of that is being handled. So, no, thank you. And then also because, creative control, same, like creative control, like didn't want to let it go. It was always like, okay, first we do this and then we do this. And I'm just like, no, I don't want to do that. I want to dive in. That's not, no, so I got met with the same thing. I felt like that. Well, I guess that was 3 times the charm. And then finally, just from talking to some friends who actually own restaurants or just restaurant people, chefs, chef owners, or just restaurant owners, I feel like they started really building my confidence back up and being like, you're ready. You should just open up your own place. And, I feel like they kind of gave me that motivation to be like, yeah, I am ready. Like souping Rocky up, And then I started watching every boxing movie possible.
There you go.
So
you gotta get the Rocky theme
getting
song.
Stronger. Yeah, that was me.
And so this place, the one that was burned out a year prior, however many months prior, how did it come about?
So it ended up, they built out a restaurant, and it was like a all-day diner sort of a thing. And at that point I was already looking for places. So I'm already looking for places. I'm already writing a business plan. I'm already like working my dream place up. And my daughter goes to school just across the street, and I would walk and pick her up, and I'm like, look at this place, it's so cute, and it's already built out. And so we would stop and get lunch here, and it was really sad because it was like people who were, it just didn't have the care that it was a new place. And I feel I mean no offense to anybody who was working here before, but it was I don't know, I just felt like there was a lack of sort of, call it leadership or heart or something, like I'm not sure, but it definitely sort of felt like that. I'm just like, oh man, like it's almost like if, to me, in my head, the way I like to look at it is like as if she was calling me as well. She's like, no, stay here, ask about it. And so I actually, at first I didn't ask, and then after a couple of places, a lot of places of looking at, I ended up just asking our realtor about, what about this place? I really want this place.
Was it for sale at the time?
No. And that
asked.
Was lucky. Yeah,
I love
just
that.
have to ask. Yeah,
Just ask. You never know.
You just have to put it out there. I'm telling everyone, if you just put it out there, things will happen. Got to say it to the universe and actually believe it. And so, it was like days before apparently it was actually going to go on the market. And so we got to see it before anybody else. And we're like, where do we sign? Let's do it.
Yeah. So what boxes were you looking for that this checked?
Small, like 40-seat restaurant, outdoor seating. It's amazing because these are all things that everybody says. I remember saying this to our investor who's like, our restaurant sort of parental guidance. And I'm like, this is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for 30, 40 seats. I'm looking for open kitchen. I'm looking for neighborhood. I'm looking for outdoor patio. I'm looking for basement. And he's just like, just laughed at me. He's just like, okay.
Good traffic.
I see you. And like, yeah, so does everybody. Everybody wants that.
Yeah.
I'm just like, but yeah, I mean, this is it. This has everything, I mean, she had everything that I was looking for.
And how much of the concept did you have fleshed out at this point in terms of like menu or style?
So I don't, everything happened really fast from the moment that I like got myself up and was like, all right, I'm going to do this. It was probably a year, but after like a year from that moment, like fast forward 365 days, and then I like had the keys to the place,
Yeah.
and so keys and like checkbook, and so I would say that the name probably didn't come until maybe, I don't know, 4 months before opening maybe, and the menu was the last thing I didn't have. Like I had an idea of like, I had an idea of like, yes, I already knew that I was going to be an antojeria. I already knew the sort of style of food that I was going to do, nostalgic Mexican, like what's it like growing up as a Mexican kid in a Mexican family. Like I already knew all of that, but I still didn't have, and I knew I wanted to have like single tacos, because I hate getting like, oh, you have to get 5 fucking tacos for an order. I'm like, I don't want 5 tacos. I just want one because I want to taste it because they're all different, like, and so like, I'm like, and I knew I was going to have a burrito, but other than that, I didn't know. And it was probably like maybe a month and a half. My husband, we went on a trip for his work because he like had won it, which was great. In Monterey Bay, actually. And, he was busy doing work stuff. And so Monterey Bay is gorgeous and beautiful. And I had no idea. So when I went there and I was like going on long walks, like there's just so much life everywhere. Everywhere that I would look, there's just like, all you have to do is like focus in your eyesight and there's movement and life. And I wrote like the menu in like, I don't know, a couple hours there. And it was very, felt really good because it was starting to get to that time where it's like, where's the menu?
It's like you had writer's block and all of a sudden it just came together.
Exactly. So for some reason, I think I do a lot of that. I think that things are just going to naturally come to me.
Well, pressure makes the diamond. And so the name. So you have a great story about that, yeah.
So Mi Tocaya, these are things that are always like, oh man, like what am I gonna name this place? This place means like, especially like, how do you? It's not like naming a child. I feel like I don't know, it's just difficult, right? And I knew I wanted to have a place that was hopefully gonna, stand the test of time and be sort of one of those places where like a name that keeps giving. And so I don't know how, I don't know how either. I mean, I was trying so many different things, so many different names. I like to draw a lot, so I would just be like drawing and I have like all of my drawings, it's crazy, of all the sort of like little renderings and things that I would do. And I think it was because my mom calls me Chana, which I hate for like as a nickname, Chana, it sounds like, I don't know, Chana. So she calls me Chana, and I'm like, I can't name it Chana. I hate that, I'm just like, and I'm definitely not going to call it my name, like, because that's lame too, Not that it is, I don't know, like, I could do better. I wanted to, like, I just knew that it wasn't it. I shouldn't say I could do better. Like, I knew it wasn't it, it just wasn't it. And so I think in that, I'm like, well, why not Diana? You know, like I started asking myself the question, well, why not Diana? And it was like, well, because it then shows like ownership over her, and I wanted her to be her own person. You know, I wanted this place to be its own person. And also at this point I had already done a lot of like sort of asking questions about like, well, what do I want this place to sort of represent? So then I came up with like, oh yeah, like, well, Mi Tocaya, you know, like Mi Tocaya is perfect because Mi Tocaya just means that my namesake, but in Mexico it's used, I hope I'm using the term right, like as a colloquialism, where it's a term of endearment that if somebody has the same name as you, I mean, if you don't like somebody and they have the same name as you, you'd be mad if they're like, hey, yo, look, that's your Tocaya over there. And be like, shut up. Yeah. You know, like you use it as a term of endearment with when you're like, oh yeah, what's up, Tocaya? You know, like, and so I'm like, oh, it's perfect. You know, like we're like kindred spirits. So it would be like kindred spirits, and the other part of it that I found to be very, very cool, like, is that at this point I had already my son as well. And so like, I think with my second son, I like became quite, really embraced my womanhood and felt different in a very positive way. And I'm like, the feminine in me was like, you know what? Mi Tocaya also represents any time that it's a feminine term because of the A. So anytime that a woman says it, it's like it bears her name as well. So this is like something for all my hermanas, sisters, ladies out there. So Mi Tocaya bears your name as well. And then the last part of it was because I'm like, at the end, why did I want to open this place? You know, why did I do the jump into owning my own place? And that was because I, you know, wanted to have a place where I would be able to include all of, I guess my three, you know, my being a chef, being, you know, a chef, being a mother, being a wife, being, you know, and this way, when I come here, I almost feel like if it's my alter ego, like if this is like my alter ego, my superhero, where like, you know, you get to be the superwoman that, you know, you want to be.
Yeah. It's beautiful. I mean, it's kind of like when people pick out tattoos. Some people go to the tattoo store and they flip through a couple of the first things and like, oh, I'll take the ladybug. And, you know, and some people, they stew on it, and it emerges at the right time. So it's an awesome story. And then the Antojeria means
Antojeria. So Antojeria means that a place that serves antojos, and antojos is, you know, like I feel like everything. Like, well, the first layer is so like antojos are plates that you share, more like sort of familiar family
meals,
style,
kinda?
I guess. I don't know. Food that's on the table, right? And that also that you crave. So to the word antojo, not only is it mean that for like pertaining to a dish, but then it also means that you're craving something, you know. And I feel that at the end of the day, everybody wants, like, one of the biggest things that I feel that people want in general is to be loved. And so, and one of the things that I think that everybody has happy memories with is with food, you know. And so that sort of craving of and so those feelings of when you are growing up and someone's making you something or taking care of you, and when you smell those dishes, maybe that your mother or your father did or whomever, it takes you back to a place where like, oh, I like crave that,
yeah.
You know, like there's nothing like it. And so I thought that it would be perfect, you know, because it's kind of the that's the vibe I was going for.
Beautiful. And so now you're here, you're 4+ years in, and what's been the biggest surprise to you as an owner instead of just exec chef? Or
I mean, there's been so many surprises. The biggest in no particular order. One huge surprise was that no matter how much experience I thought I had, whether it was, I was drawing from everything, realized that didn't know shit, that owning is completely different. That owning is totally different from being an executive chef, and from, it's very different. So that's something. After the first year, a big thing was to learn how to step away, to have balance. To have balance where, you don't want, if I made this place to be conducive, to be like more like water in my life versus not running me like, that would be the opposite effect, and so, it's hard that's why it's hard in marriage life or with children. And so I'm just like, listen, I need to know when it's like, you need to go home. You need to go home. Like, there's always tomorrow. You need to learn how to trust people. You need to be able to step away. You need to, because if not, 5 minutes, 10 minutes turns into hours. And next thing you know, you have to be there for your significant other. You have to. If not, you're not going to get it in return.
Right.
So, that's a big one. And then, I think those are two of the biggest things. But, yeah, I think those are the two biggest things that I learned. But, 2020 was just totally different. That was like the wild card. And so I would say that in 2021, so far, what I'm going into the sort of the year, I guess, is like more, not so much of what I've learned. Well, what I've learned is that, like, hey, you know what? Like, it's okay to try things and to fail, because we tried a lot of different things, and it's okay to try things and to fail. That you have to keep pushing. And that for 2021, this time, it's like, I've said this before, but I think that it's like this slogan sort of that I had going into this year, is that 2020 was hard because, like, I had not just no idea what was happening. I think that it's like you couldn't even look up the information. It was just so crazy, and things were just happening at such a fast pace, not just with the pandemic, but, pandemic, industry, job market, racism, the protest, political climate. Yeah, it was just insane. Yeah, it was crazy. And so with 2021, I just feel like, this time you could kind of now be like, expect the unexpected, but plan and hope for the best.
Yeah. And how much do you think, like, having kids has changed you as a chef or a boss or an owner?
Tremendously, because I was a vessel of growing someone, so like now I feel like Mother Earth. So there's a level of sort of understanding of what you put in your body, or how you use your body, or like being in tune with your body and feeling what's happening. It's amazing. And with cooking, I think that it's changed because, throughout sort of my life as a cook, at first it's like, okay, I want to learn these techniques, learn these recipes, write down these recipes, take a look at your ingredients, understanding ratios, like sort of the science behind it, and what you could do with sort of the whole scheme of things. Everything has salt and sugar and acid and, so I think that, and then it's like a ratio and percentages and all of this. And then I think that I don't know if I stopped doing that. I don't think like that anymore. I look more like I've said I'm more of a bruja. So a bruja to me is somebody who, I feel that you have this pot and you're creating something, and everything that you put in there from start to finish, like we've all seen sort of like these, again, like images of like having your cupboard full of ingredients, and there are all these unique ingredients from all over the place, whether it is from different animals or seeds, nuts, roots, actual fruits and vegetation and florals, and all of that is medicine. That's literally all medicine. And putting it into, I just find it extremely gratifying and inspiring, gratifying to know that you could make your own potions in a format of nourishing and put your heart into something, or knowing like if I add this, what the grand scheme of it all means. Like I feel like now I understand ingredients a lot more. I have a crazy amount of respect, not just for the ingredients, but also La Tierra, which is Mother Earth, and understanding how throughout, whether it's raining or sunny or cold or what all that does, so like when the seasons change, like you could feel it. It's like, and it's all part of like the scheme. So I feel like in tune, and with that intuition, I feel that it's made me a bruja, a witch.
And so that's an intuition.
A good witch.
Of course, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that's an intuition, that's experience, obviously some gift, some natural ability.
And intention, I feel like the last part of that is intention, because when you use anything without intention, it becomes lost in translation.
Sure. And so your path to where you are today took a lot of turns. What would you recommend for a young chef, wannabe chef, soon-to-be chef? Because you did do some culinary school, but you've also, you went to the top at a very young age, and then you worked for other people and then became an owner. What kind of recommendations would you give in terms of experience trying to work for the right chefs, or just trying to go to school?
I would say, and just because I've seen this a lot, I think that you can't grow up you have to have patience. You can't grow up that fast. It's just like being a kid. And so from the moment that you say, I want to be a chef, and, there's so many different avenues that you could take, and so many things. I mean, what does that mean to you? To me, it meant that I knew I wanted to be a restaurant chef. And so, asking yourself those questions, and then when you immerse yourself in that, to have patience, to actually be able to allow yourself to learn the craft, to really listen to the lessons, because it is a craft. It took me like 10 years of working, as a cook, before I even had a holy shit moment where I'm like, you know what? Like, I feel like I could make something now, and it makes perfect sense. Like, oh, that's why this, or that's why I did this way back then, or this and that. Like, it takes time to, to have a library. And I think that it's nice to learn, like, I think a lot of times people can want to grow up before they're still too young. And I think it's nice to be able to allow yourself to have that time to work with people that you want to work with, that you want to learn from, that you respect, that you can have that relationship where, like, I give you my all and you give me your all. I think ultimately that's like the dream relationship that every chef wants, you know, like you give me everything, I give you everything, you know? So ask yourself questions to sort of fine point and focus a little bit of what you want to do to provide some sort of direction through you, and to make sure that you give yourself the time to actually learn and work on your craft, like using your knife, like you listening to sauces, to tasting. You know, I couldn't tell you how many cooks I've met in probably the last 10 years that a lot of those skill sets seem to have been blurred, pushed to the side, because there's been sort of this sort of cultural change with the food industry, where like being a chef is, I don't know, a thing of fame and glory, perhaps, you know, like, and sure, you know, of course you could have fame and glory, that's fine. But I mean, there's a lot of work to put in,
right.
You know, there's a lot of work to put in into building, you know, and that's ultimately what you're doing. You have to have those building blocks, you know.
TV shows have been great and terrible for the industry altogether. Like, it exposed a
well,
lot
I
at the
mean,
same time.
it's one of those things where, like, you know, they're not the ones that are, it's not their fault, you know, it's not their fault.
Right.
There's a room for everything. I just think that, you know, buying a $500 knife or $150 knife and then not knowing how to fucking use it, that's a huge problem. And I've seen that so many times, you know, like, and be like, I have to cut
there
how
should
much?
be a test,
you know, like,
you
and it's just like, wait a minute, like, I don't understand. Or like being busy, you know, like you're busy and like, how can you, like, that's, you know, these are all major parts. Or like, you have to get this done or that, or like really making sure that you're doing this, understanding what you're making, because, you know, I always tell everybody, you know, when I show somebody how to make something, there's layers that I show them. Like, this is what it's on. This is where I came up with this. This is the history behind this. This is how we're doing it. This is this. Like, this is why. This is, like, it's all relevant, you know? Like, if you know, whether you're dicing or slicing or, you know, the amount of heat you put into something, how much fire do you need, how much salt, at what point, like, it's all super relevant. If not, you know, just wasted everybody's time, including yourself.
Sure.
Your own time.
And what about awards? You've been nominated for James Beard. You've gotten all sorts of accolades. Bib Gourmand from Michelin.
They're great. Well, I mean, when you get them, it's amazing, right?
Yeah.
I'll say that. I'll say this.
Thanks for being honest.
Yeah.
So
I mean, come on. Who's gonna be like?
Some people do.
You know, who's gonna be like? It doesn't feel great to have an award. Of course, it feels great. You know what I mean? Of course, it feels great. I will say that I never thought about that. I honestly never thought about that. I never thought about winning a James Beard Award. I never thought about, not that I haven't, being nominated, about any of those things, you know. I just wanted to be able to have the opportunity to do what I love, and to do my dream, you know. That's what I sought. So, it's easy for me to be like, oh, follow your heart, and then you're going to get all these awards. I don't know. I think that that's important, you know, like it's not about, I don't know, it's clout chasing, you know, like, and I don't think that's, it's not what matters to me, and it's not what matters to us here at the restaurant, you know, like I wanted to have a place that was going to stand the test of time. Like, you know, I have a list of things that, like, this is what I want from this place. This is what I want. Does it feel great to have people sort of recognize that and get that? Yes, it feels tremendously great. It really, really does.
Yeah.
It really does. It feels great. But you know, it's 100% not everything. It's just like anything. You're number one right now. You win this award, and then once it's done, it's done.
Yeah.
So that's not what is going to last forever.
Right. But things like Todas Ponen, things that you're doing to change people's lives, that's hard to top.
I think so. I think anytime that you do something that you are, having good intentions, and I think is really important. I mean, that's why I'm a good witch.
There you go. Mm-hmm. And so if people want to support Todas Ponen, how would they go about doing that?
So donating, many different ways, but donating is very important for us. I wish I had the PBS spiel, people like you are the people who can help us keep doing this. I wish I had it verbatim.
But if you don't ask, you don't get. So
donating, so donating is huge for us. So we have our donation link on our bio on our Instagram. We have the donation link on our website, mitocaya.com. And we also have, or you could go straight to the source where it's all linked up to the Logan Square Neighborhood Association.
Beautiful. Yes, we will do our best to promote that as much as possible. We love what you're doing.
Thank you.
And before we wrap up, I just want to know, what's next? What's the next 1, 3, 5 years looking for Chef Diana?
What's next? So, you know what? I think that we're kind of in that, we're kind of in that mode right now where I'm trying to think, how am I going to put all this together? Because, I had what's next all planned out for 2020, right. and so I want to go back. Those are things that I still want to do. One of them is probably 100% still, I want to have my own masa mill here in our neighborhood. And so having my own masa mill, and I would say, honestly, I want to travel more. I want to see my family in Mexico. I feel like it's been forever. And continue my education so I could continue to do what I do here.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm not, so masa mill, continuing my education, going to the source, my family, and Mexico, the cuisine I adore. And I would say that for now.
That's a beautiful plan. Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you for sharing your evening with us. I know you've got family at home that you would love to see.
Yeah, I gotta get steaks on the stove.
So we'll let you get there. Well, thank you very much for your time. We wish you the best of luck and congratulations on everything you're doing to help. And we'll be here rooting you on and cheering for you and watching you succeed for years to come.
Yay, thank you.
Cheers. Thank you. Thank you, Chef Diana, for all you do to give back to the community. And I'm sorry for butchering your name, the name of your restaurant, and many other Spanish words during this podcast. Que barbaridad. So if you want to find out more about the Todas Ponen project, or find out how you can get some of their amazing Mexican cuisine, go to mitocaya.com. That's mitocaya.com. Or click on the link in the show notes. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd really appreciate a like, a 5-star rating, and to have you as a subscriber. Or follow us on social media at get_tapped. What's on Tap is brought to you by TappedIn. To see how we can help your bar, restaurant, or nightclub, visit us at gettappedin.io. This episode was hosted and produced by Joe Sheehan, with special guest Chef Diana Dávila of Mi Tocaya. Our AV technician was Nadine Lomaton, editing by Andrew Rockefeller, and marketing by Caitlin Cavanaugh. Until next time, cheers.